this particular show because you're going to want to hear what we're talking about tonight. We sometimes have some very important stuff that you never hear anyplace else, and sometimes we just talk about the stuff that you're already talking about from our perspective, and it's the same perspective that many people that watch the show have. Don, how you doing today?
Doing fantastic. Glad to be here again.
Good. How's the weather where you are?
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I mean, finally, we're over the heat wave. I'm just across the river in Vancouver today, Vancouver across from Portland, and it's like a mild 74, so it's nice.
Yeah, well, isn't today like the first day of fall?
You're right. I've forgotten. It is.
It is. I heard that today, and my heart sunk. I just went, oh man, I can't take it when summer's over.
Well, the Northwest has such amazing summers. And one of the things, I lived in Southern California for a long time. And one of the things I noticed immediately was that in the summer, the days don't get longer there because you're closer to the equator, right? So dark at like 8 in the summer, and it gets dark at like 6 in the winter. You don't have much of a swing. Here, we get these 10 o'clock in the evening days. It's just glorious, right? So we pay for it in later in the year, of course, but the summers are amazing in the Northwest.
Yeah, they are. And actually, it's been a good summer. So I guess I shouldn't lament the passing of it too much. But I should mention, Don, since we've never done the show together, that I occasionally. Am I unfrozen now?
I hear you fine. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do occasionally freeze. So I've got Starlink, and I've got a little bit of shading from a tree. I live in the forest. I've cut most of the trees so I could get a nice clear view of the satellites, but I have one that's shading a little bit. So every once in a while I'm going to freeze. So I keep an eye on you. So I know that when you freeze, I am frozen.
The audience is saying that they don't see you. They just see me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe we don't have this. I don't have this figured out yet. Then
well, we got some technology here issues here, Lori.
What a great show! We got Don on the screen, and there's somebody in the background talking to Don. And Don's talking to somebody who's not there. Okay, well, I'm not sure exactly how that works. So maybe everybody in the audience. So is it just me now, or is it me and Don?
I think it's working now, right, audience? I see both of us.
Yeah.
Bobby, what do you say? Lori says she'll talk to anybody, so. So now they say they just see David. Oh, now that should be good.
Okay. See, I couldn't. This was another thing I could not practice before the show started because I didn't have two people. So here we go. We're good now. So one of the stories we're going to talk about tonight is, and this is a question I got to ask you, Don. I'm asking just about everybody I know that can think, and I know that you're a thinker. One of the stories is about, there's a problem. Companies have problems getting employees. It's like after 2020, all of the workers went somewhere and they never returned. What in the heck happened to all the workers, Don? Where did everybody go? I mean, customer service is almost non-existent in most industries. Everybody's got a help wanted sign out. What happened?
I can only, like most people, I can only speculate. I think a significant degree of this is we've taught people how not to work.
I guess, but how do they do it? I mean, I'm all in. I'm all in. How can I not work? I'm 63 years old. I'd kind of like to not work, but I haven't figured out how to do it. I mean, is there some app somewhere that everybody downloaded and I'm just not privy, or what?
Yeah, I don't know, but they certainly don't seem to be genetically predisposed to work like previous generations were.
Yeah.
We see this kind of a thing where people are comfortable being on the couch till they're in their 30s, and it's just and then when the government did what they did, you think about all the that COVID shutdown. Who did it hurt the most? So the service sector, right, which is usually the first rung on the ladder, right? Well, I don't know how many of those service jobs have come back. A lot of those businesses. I mean, if you're running a small restaurant and the government bankrupts you, even if you didn't get bankrupt, you got to think to yourself, do I want to go back to that? They could do that
Right.
again.
Right.
So,
well, that's kind of the other. Yeah, it's kind of the other component to it too, because as far as I know, hundreds of thousands of small businesses, many of them restaurants, service businesses, gyms, bakeries, whatever the heck they are, went out of business because of the lockdowns in 2022. So there should be fewer jobs, but yet those jobs are still not getting filled. And one of the things I guess somebody's trying to do is go into the four-day work week, which I kind of like that idea. I think a lot of people like that idea. There are some industries and some sectors that do that regularly. I know my oldest daughter is a nurse, and she works, I think, 3 12-hour shifts. When she's employed in a place where she's doing contract work now, but and that's pretty usual for nurses. I know there's a lot of manufacturing companies that do 410s, and I can see the savings in that. I mean, I can see some overhead savings and operating your facility one less day a week. But one of the things I don't see is, how do you maintain a service business? How do you maintain a restaurant? How do you maintain a call center? How do you
Yeah, I mean,
sure
those things. Yeah, if you're in virtual jobs, then those things just work out great. But those jobs that you got to be client facing, or manufacturing type roles, that's a much more difficult thing to do. It's amazing how the people who make these policies, I think they live in their own echo chamber. They only around people who are like themselves. So
right.
If you're only around your entire social network is made up of people who have these high-paying professional, virtual type roles, they simply don't get it, that there's a whole nother economy out there and a whole nother group of people who are really harmed by this stuff.
Yeah, and it just amazes me that we're in a position where, and I don't know the numbers on it, but I know there must be probably fewer jobs than there were pre-2020, because there's fewer businesses, because we know many of them went out of business. I do know that small business accounts for like 70-75% of all jobs in America. It's hard for me to understand how being paid to stay home in 2020 has translated into nobody is willing or nobody is available to work. I mean, one of the things, Don, I thought about is, have millions of people died and no one's told us?
Well, since any thinking person would have a real lack of distrust from any data coming from the government, right?
Right.
So you're pretty much forced to look at our alternative media, or best thing to do, I think, is look at your own universe. Like, what do you see in your world? What's rational and what makes sense? I think we all have to learn to do a better job of that. What do you see that makes sense? I mean, for example, I'll go there for a moment with regard to the COVID thing. Do you know, or are you beginning to see people who are suddenly dead? Who were otherwise healthy.
Right.
I just went to a funeral 2 days ago from someone who was completely healthy, and just now they're not here. And I know 2 of the others. And I anticipated that sort of thing would start to happen. Now, they're not telling us that in the national media, of course.
Right.
But if you dig around, you will find things like, or if you talk to physicians who are willing to be honest, there's a lot more sickness and illness, call them vaccine injuries, than anyone's willing to talk about. So that's just another one of those things.
Yeah, it must be. Well, I feel bad for business. I hope they get it straightened out. Personally, my expectations are just rock bottom now. Since COVID, I expect no service. I expect very little from the service people that I interact with, and that's what I get. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for it. I mean, it's kind of it's this restaurant that I go to regularly. I mean, the people are they're not the people that used to be there. And as far as I know, those people, all those people that used to be there are not dead. And I don't know what happened to them, but there's just new people everywhere. But so one of the other stories we're going to cover tonight is in Oregon, Ohio. there's a big BP British Petroleum refinery that blew up apparently yesterday. Unfortunately, it appears there's been some injuries. I don't know what the count is on that, but it just seems like another in the hit against our our commodities and our. It kind of reminds me a little bit of our food processing fires, which media has been very good to tell us that there's no more fires than there usually are. They're very good to tell us that these facilities, these food processing facilities, are prone to fire, and that they often burn down. And if you think that there's too many of them, it's just coincidence. Which is, kind of the same thing I remember media telling us, in September of 2020 when there was a line of huge fires going up the east side of I-5 in Oregon. It was just, there was no arson. That's
yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, if you look again, this is one of those things where you use your common sense once again. If they're telling you something like that, it's like where there's smoke, there's fire. One extra, two extra, maybe. When you're looking at 300, 400, 500% more than there's ever been in the past, then there's something awry. I mean, the first thing I thought when I saw that a petroleum fire was, I don't know for sure, and heavens knows the media is not going to report it, but was that let's call it what it is, potentially a terrorist attack? You don't know, but it's plausible.
It is plausible, and I have noticed, at least I have noticed with the food processing facilities, there doesn't seem to be a lot of follow up on those. I guess it's probably incumbent upon me to go back and see if I can follow up and find out what the causes of those were. But then again, I would have to rely probably on media. I don't have obviously the time to go do any primary research and find out exactly what they are. But we don't seem to hear about that. I mean, it's just not something we hear about. We hear about it blew up or it's on fire, and then they figure out that some guy military age between 18 and 45 was arrested, with a gas can down the street from there. And that, for whatever reason, that doesn't make the news. But I'm sure it's probably not going to help fuel prices.
Yeah. Oh, no. Yeah. And there seems to be a pretty strategic effort to do everything possible to drive fuel prices as high as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the things that have occurred. This is not like it's rocket science. I mean, once upon a time, you could have made the case that, Democrats and Republicans both wanted to solve the problem. They just wanted to go about it in different ways. I don't think you can say that anymore. When you do things like shut down the pipeline, for example, shut off access to places inside the United States where we can get our own energy. When you're doing those kinds of things, the only thing that can result from that is shortages. It's the same philosophy that you'd apply to reducing the number of cops. The only thing that can come from that is increased violence. Yeah. Right. That's so. It looks awfully intentional to me. It's strategic.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like they're, if you add all of this stuff up, and we've talked about this on this show quite a bit over the last couple of years, because this has been a very eventful couple of years. I mean, I don't know how many times I have said on this show and other conversations that I never thought in a million years anything like this would happen. Where I live in the United States of America, the kind of things we saw in 2020 and, the mandates and all that crap in 2021. But it just seems like there seems to be an overall input of policy and actions that cause chaos and the degradation of society. I mean, if you kind of put them all together and you look at it and you go, yeah, that, violence, drugs, homelessness, all that stuff, the inability, the rising prices, the inability for people to be able to afford to live. And, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it all kind of seems like it's pointing the same direction.
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I guess I am a conspiracy theorist. I think to a certain extent, you have to look at this, yes, conspiracies have a bad reputation, right? But pretty much everything is a question of what's the rational conspiracy theory we should say, right? Because everything we see around us is a result of a conspiracy. 56 guys got together to start the United States, back in 1776. That was a conspiracy. 12 guys got together and started a church. That was a conspiracy, right?
Yes.
Sears and Roebuck got together and started that company. Montgomery Ward, all of us, everything we see around us. So it's just a question of which ones make sense, which ones, a lot of people don't realize, but the assassination of Abraham Lincoln was a conspiracy. They ended up trying to kill the Secretary of State, Lincoln, the vice president. They just didn't get to all of them, right? So what we're looking at here, if you look at the evidence, it does awfully look like to me that the elites that run this country don't like us.
It appears that way. And they don't like the American way or the American way of life because, I've noticed over the years that the culture has just rotted. A culture that used to spring forth from, the family and the church is now a culture that springs forth from media and entertainment. And Andrew Breitbart was the one that coined the phrase that culture is downstream of media and policy is downstream of culture. And so culture or policy becomes a remedial effort to, somehow shape up a culture. But once culture is rotted, unless we change the culture, there's very little we can do. And all of these things seem to be aimed, at, rotting a culture. I mean, the state of Oregon itself, they're having a problem. One of the articles here, they have a problem filling their legislative equity officer position, right? And from the article, you read, from a couple of its former, apparently one of them was in there and did not discernibly do anything and left. And another one was claimed to be pushed out because of kind of like whistleblowing. But it seems to be the article mentions also that the article is about recruiting. So they're going to hire a $100,000 recruiting firm to fill this position because they can't fill it, right? Well, some of the recruiting firms looked at the position. They go, "Nah, there's no way we can fill that." It's one of those government jobs where I don't know what kind of person it would work in there. Put it that way.
Everybody's going to hate you. Everybody's going to hate you.
Right? Yeah, you're going to get pressure, political pressure from the party that's in power. You're going to get pressure from everybody that's hiding something. You're going to get pressure from obviously the people that are filing the complaint. This position is supposed to handle harassment complaints and stuff like that, and kind of be an impartial adjudicator, if you will, of the process, at least, leave the fact that it's hard to fill any job anywhere aside, and then try to fill a job like this. It's amazing that, I guess it's not amazing that the state is willing to spend $100,000 to fill that job.
It is incredible. Well, the job itself, you have to wonder about the value of that too, but that's a whole nother thing. You're working with people who are completely dysfunctional. I mean, that's the definition of what they are. They're so hung up on who they are and defining themselves by the way they look or what their gender is, as opposed to how well they're doing a job. It's a no-win.
Right. Well, one interesting nugget in this story, I think it is an OPB story. So one interesting nugget, and I've noticed over the years that you can get some nuggets out of OPB. I've done a couple of interviews with them over the years, and they have been what I would characterize as surprisingly fair to me, which I wouldn't expect at all. But one of the nuggets in there is one of the politicians, I think it was up there in House District 22, if I remember correctly, North Willamette Valley area, north of Salem. Diego Hernandez, I think his name is. He resigned, but he filed a complaint. He had several complaints of harassment against him, I think, from probably female staffers or people within the building. But he filed a complaint. His complaint was against Democrat governor nominee Tina Kotek, then Speaker of the House. And his complaint alleges, and this completely corroborates everything I have ever heard about Tina Kotek from people in the building. His claim is that she threatened to ruin his political career if he did not vote the way she wanted on a piece of legislation.
Wow. Wow.
So everything I've heard about Tina is that she is as mean people come, and that it was not uncommon when she was Speaker of the House to see legislators leaving her office crying.
Wow.
Yeah, and that is directly from people that work in the building. So if you're thinking about voting for Tina Kotek, or if you know someone, if you're if your 90-year-old mother-in-law has been a lifelong Democrat and thought that she might want to vote for Tina Kotek, well, you better tell her that. Now, I have a 92-year-old mother-in-law, just turned 92, who has been a Democrat her entire life, up until about a year ago.
Wow. So what pushed her over the top to make the change, you think?
It was my wife, her daughter, explaining everything that the Democrats in Oregon do. Just because she watches the evening news, she doesn't get any of it. She doesn't know. As far as she knows, Republicans are trying to kill everybody, and they hate everybody, and they want to destroy the world. And Democrats are, thank God, saving it. She just told her, all of the stuff that was happening over the years. And I'm pretty sure that she stopped voting for Democrats a few years ago. But she finally, I think it's been about a year or so, she finally made the switch. So lifelong Democrat, she will most likely die a Republican. Although at 92, she is still independent and doing well. So awesome. Yeah, it is awesome. It is awesome.
Well, the thing is, most of us are born into a certain party, and in our case, the party left us. I mean, I was a Democrat for a long time, and somewhere in the late 80s, early 90s, I was like, I'm voting for stuff that is not in alignment with my principles.
Exactly.
I think most people just keep voting certain. It's like they were born that way. Just keep doing it until they get hit over the head with a sledgehammer. And if the last 2 or 3 years hasn't been a sledgehammer, I don't know what it will take.
Yeah, I don't know either. I understand where you're coming from, though. I was kind of I wasn't registered to vote, but I was kind of a de facto Democrat as a union construction worker. Blah, 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 blah. Democrats, Republicans are bad. And then the thing that got me was I remember getting a phone call. Well, one of the things I kept asking people I worked with, I was an apprentice. I go, why are we voting for people that want to take away our guns? And nobody really wanted to talk about that. And I would ask, why do we voting for people who want to kill our children? I mean, would rather our children be killed before they're born. Nobody wanted to talk about that. But the thing that got me was I remember getting a phone call from people down at the Union Hall saying, "Hey, Brother Dave, why don't you plan on coming down here and let's do some phone banking for Al Gore." That's when I thought to myself, you know what? None of what this union does politically aligns with my values, and I became a non-member. Left that, never looked back. But yeah, it's kind of weird. So Portland's always in the news. Have you noticed that, Don?
It used to be such a quiet city. Nobody heard about it except for when the Trailblazers won the championship. You never heard about them.
Yeah.
Now in the news for all the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I bet you're glad to live in Vancouver.
Yeah, my mom's in Portland, so I have to still go into the dark side,
Oh, really? Oh, gosh. So this story is last time I was up there, I couldn't believe the amount of RVs. I mean, there was the streets. It seemed like everywhere were lined with RVs and travel trailers of various functionality. Some of them have torn apart. Some of them look like they've been, burnt down. I kind of noticed that, and I've noticed this over the last couple of years, is that there seems to be at least one or two RVs that are like the community parts vehicle. Have you noticed that? It's kind of in a state of disassembly. And if you need something, you go take that. But this story apparently there's a bunch of them moved in along Sandy Boulevard, and they're just not going anywhere. And I don't know exactly what the city is doing to try to get them to move along or to find a place for them. But I know the residents are just up in arms about it. I've kind of had a little bit of a change of opinion on this, a change of heart, and I have changed my political views quite a bit over the years, actually. I guess I don't see anything wrong with using public money to find a place for these people to pitch a tent. When I look at how much it costs the city to clean up the garbage strewn along dozens and dozens, or maybe hundreds of streets spread out across the entire city, I'm thinking, well, if you do buy a big chunk of land and you say, hey, you can, pitch your tent there, you can keep the trash at a minimum. You can keep the RVs, in one spot. If the city wants to provide sanitation, it can, keep people from, having homeless people do their thing in their front yard, which is happening all over Portland. And, I thought about that long and hard the other day, and I thought, well, maybe that's not a bad situation. I mean, my overall view is it's not government's job to provide for anybody. Provide for the common defense. Provide for the defense provide a post office. Okay, that's what it costs. Raise an army and a post office. But what do you think is the solution to all of this? It just people are talking and just nothing seems to be. No one's landed on a solution.
Well, I think, and there's been a couple of cities around the country. There was a great documentary done about Seattle. I can't remember the name of it now. And
Seattle dying.
Yes, that was excellent. But I think the first job of government is to protect the citizens. That is what we paid them to do more than anything else. So enforce the law. It's illegal to camp on sidewalks and streets and in front of people's houses. Enforce the law. That's the first thing, which means, and this is the law side of it, I think you have to put these people in something tantamount to jail, if you will. But remember, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 or 90% of these people are on the streets because they have a major drug problem.
Yeah.
So the compassionate side to that is in this facility, which jail is probably not the right word, but something like that, is we have to build facilities to detox these people. This is the compassionate thing to do, and clean them up. And for those who are able to check the boxes and willing to stick with a program to get cleaned up, we can introduce them gradually back into society. And for those that can't, it's not compassionate for them to live on the streets and under bridges and die alone. We keep them in this facility. I don't know if you remember the old Damish Hospital from Wilsonville back in the day.
I do. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. So we got rid of those nationally back in the 80s. My opinion, we should bring those back. Now, obviously, you can't be doing electroshock therapy and all that other one flew over the cuckoo's nest stuff they used to do. Right. You can't go Ken Kesey on people, right?
Right. Yeah.
But facilities like that, because it's not humane what we're doing now. And people will say it's against their constitutional rights and it's inhumane to lock these people up. Well, is that better than what we're doing to them now?
Yeah.
It's horrendous what we're doing now. And so I think the solution looks something like that, but you got to have the political will. You got to be, let's put it to be blunt, you got to be big boys and girls. It takes grown-ups in political positions to make those hard decisions. And right now, we definitely don't have grown-ups running Oregon.
No, especially in the city of Portland.
Especially Portland. Yeah, you're right. The rest is really about 3 or 4 counties. You take out Multnomah County, you take out maybe Clackamas, Lane, the counties where the biggest cities are, and the rest of the state's fine.
Yeah,
As is really true of every state in the country, by the way.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, Portland is. I've called it the Detroit of the West. I mean, it's moving in that direction. It's there's at some point in time, it's going to look like that because people will move out. People have been moving out. People don't want to raise their kids around that. I mean, there was a 5-year-old girl. Somebody attempted to kidnap her. It was, I believe, in Northwest Portland. It was either today or yesterday.
Saw that.
And if the caregiver, nanny, or babysitter, whoever it was, had not bear sprayed this kidnapper, there'd be one more missing child. I mean, just right on the street. And that's, that is what Portland has become. And I certainly wouldn't chastise anybody for not wanting to live in that.
Oh, I tell you, Portland's taken on a feel. The best thing I can describe is, have you ever gone from San Diego to Tijuana?
Yes.
Okay. So when you go from San Diego to Tijuana, you've entered the twilight zone.
Yeah, you're in Tijuana.
You know you're in Tijuana, right? And therefore, the legal system's different in Tijuana. So you know that, well, it's if I get in a car wreck, I need to get out of there quickly. If a cop pulls me over, I got to pay a bribe. I mean, know the rules are different. Portland is starting to feel like that, I tell you. And when you know people personally, it's one thing to hear 3 or 4 people removed about these incidents, like the kidnapping thing, right? But I now know people, first-degree people, who've gone to Portland. And, for example, I knew a gal across the street. She went to Portland for a 1-year wedding anniversary deal. And somebody went through and just broke all the car windows. This is in Pearl District, really nice part of Portland. Came through the crowbar and just broke everybody's car window. Not to steal anything, just to do damage, right? My daughter was over there on New Year's and got rear-ended by a drunk on I-84 or high or whatever. And the guy just drove on, like hit and run, right? I have another friend. He says, "Hey, I work in downtown Portland. What never makes the media is bullets fly regularly. So if they don't hit anybody, it doesn't make the news."
Wow, really?
He said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Hey, Friday, Saturday night, when the sun goes down, you need to be someplace else, right?"
Wow.
So these things. I'll tell you another one. A good friend of mine is a detective in Portland. And people don't realize this, to put this in the media, the prostitutes on 82nd Street walk the streets with no clothes on. Find me another city where that happens, right?
Really?
I mean, nude.
Wow.
So there's not enough cops. I've driven through Portland, and there's street racing regularly. You drive through and you never see cops anymore. And I mean, I have personally witnessed this. Cars go by on 205 at 90 miles an hour, right? It's taken on a feeling of lawlessness, like I used to feel like when I went to Tijuana. You literally feel like, park your car on the American side of the border and walk across. Don't drive.
Right. Yeah. Portland has kind of an escape from New York feel to it now.
Yeah.
I don't spend much time there, but
no. And, I tell my kids, you can't be over there after dark. I go visit my mom and I get out of there before it's dark. And it was never that way.
No, it was always the place we went. I mean, I grew up in a small town, 22 miles south of Portland. And that was always the place we went, to listen to music and go to bars and hang out and all that. And it was a nice town. There was no problems. And I have, my youngest lives in that same location now. And she does go to Portland. And I go, gosh, Christine, don't go there after night.
Well, you might remember when 82nd Avenue had the gut, where the high schoolers would cruise the street.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah,
I was a car guy. Of course,
there you go.
Lancaster Drive in Salem and 82nd in Portland.
Yeah. Oh, I've been to Lancaster. I had some friends down in Salem too. Yeah. Well, those things you wouldn't dare do anymore. And to your point about people leaving Portland, well, the right people are leaving and the wrong people are coming.
Yes. Yeah, I have noticed that. I did hear someone mention, I forget where it was, but someone mentioned that they had talked to someone who ended up in Portland, drugged out, and they came to Portland specifically because hard drugs have been decriminalized in small amounts.
Oh yeah. We're attracting the worst of other cities. This reminds me, I got to tell you this story because I think it's so apropos. So in the 80s, I was living in LA. And if you recall, that's when the Crips and Bloods were going wild down there, right? I mean, it was just gangland. Well, when the LAPD cracked down on that, I had a couple of friends who were lawyers and police officers in LA. And they said the word on the street was, we need to go to Portland and Seattle because they're soft up there. And then in the early 90s, they moved up here. And you remember how wild it was in Portland and Seattle in the 90s. That was why. So these people talk. They know where it's soft on crime, and they relocate to places where they can live their life the way they want to live it. And Portland and Seattle are attracting that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. If the last 2 years are any indication, Portland is wide open. If I were going to involve myself in spurious criminal activity, I'd definitely go to Portland because the cops aren't coming. Stick them up, give me all your money. I'm going to call the cops.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. All your weight and give me your money.
And there's no weirder feeling in the world than calling 911. I had this happen once. My daughter and I were driving through Portland, and some guy who was clearly whacked out on drugs was wandering on the middle of I-5, right down there by the Coliseum. And I called 911, and I got put on hold for like probably 15 seconds. Now, when you have an emergency, 15 seconds is an eternity.
That's all the time in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. But they don't have, unless there's a murder in the act of happening, they're not coming. So be glad you have a Second Amendment. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, no kidding. Although I'm not sure how much of what value that Second Amendment is in the county of Multnomah. It appears that if you do nothing more than brandish, if you will, and there's no brandish law in the state of Oregon, but if you do nothing more than draw your weapon, you're going to face felony charges. I don't know. So to wrap up here, Don, do you think more and more people are figuring out or making the connecting the dots here, making the correlation between the way cities like Portland have changed and the people they vote for? I mean, do you think it's? I mean, are people finally waking up to that? Are they going, "Hey, man, the way this city is run, it just isn't any good"?
It can feel discouraging, especially when you look at how the mass media has covered this up, right? But I do think it's changing. Here's one of the reasons. You look at the polling data, and the polling data shows that those that tend towards a conservative are definitely winning, but it doesn't look like by very much. But I think one thing they have to keep in mind is they have demonized, the national media has demonized anyone who would vote conservatively so much that people are afraid to tell you what they really think. Yeah. So I think these polls are really underreporting what people are really thinking and feeling. I'm pretty certain of that. You look at what happened in that talk that Biden gave, where he pretty much called everybody, well, to use Hillary Clinton's old thing, deplorable and worse, enemies of the state, basically. So that's going to suppress people from telling you what they really think. I mean, how many people are comfortable putting even a conservative sign in their front yard anymore? In Portland, that could get your windows broken out.
Yeah.
You wouldn't do it. You heard about the kid who got murdered in, was it North Dakota, because he had conservative views and the guy ran him over with his truck?
I did. And I don't even think that made the national news, did it?
I didn't see it in anything national. I don't really watch national news because it's terrible, but probably it's not going to make national news. Yeah. So, so that kind of stuff, if you take the fringe people who are kind of crazy, that kind of conversation that Joe Biden gave, you're going to push some of those people who are already on the edge over the edge. But you have a number of people who, when I go to the polling booth, though nobody's looking, and I can say what I really feel. So I think that change is happening, and I think we're going to see it. I call it Judgment Day, but
well, it should be Judgment Day, Don. I mean, that should be the voters' judgment of how well the elected official done. It did. It's called term limits. It's called it's called hiring. It's the review, employee review, and you flunked. Well, I think you're probably onto something there, Don. I think we saw the same thing in 2020. All of the polling,
Yes.
indicated that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and I think there's a lot of closet Trump supporters, if you will, out there. Obviously enough to pull them over the edge or over the finish line. So yeah, I hope you're right, because we really need to change this, and the only way you can really do it, effectively, without refreshing the tree of liberty, is to change our political policymakers. Policy got us here. I mean, these are the consequences of bad policy, bad decisions, bad interpretation of polling, if you will, from Democrats, thinking that people, want to have a homeless situation like we have, and no cops. People really want no cops. We need to defund those mean cops.
Yeah, it's unreal. The people who push this stuff never pay the price for their policies. And the people who are pushing this stuff, they're not living in those neighborhoods in Northeast Portland where this is happening.
No.
Yeah.
And the people at the top have armed guards. I mean,
well, we saw the case with Martha's Vineyard. Did you hear about that one?
Oh yeah, isn't that funny?
They hired the National Guard to get the
and they bring like 125 National Guard in to get rid of 50 illegal aliens.
Yeah.
Dang, oh man!
In Southeast Portland neighborhood, somebody's got like a giant trailer, and think about the pain for those poor people. You spent your life, the biggest asset you'll ever own is a house. You spent your hard-earned money to buy that house.
Yeah.
Now you got this campground across the front. You couldn't move if you wanted to. You're paying the mortgage. Your home value's dropped about 90%. Who's going to buy that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good luck on that open house.
Yeah. And the city won't enforce the law. I mean, I feel so terrible for those people. They're being robbed by the state. They really are.
Yeah, they really are. They really are. I mean, this bad policy has consequences, and it has bad consequences for good people. Unfortunately, the bad consequences for the bad people seems to be inversely proportional, and that seems to be part of the whole chaos thing. Don, it was fun to finally do a show with you.
Yeah, it was good. I'm so glad we finally got to do it. It's been long enough, but we finally made it happen.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We kind of got into our, Don and Sunny do Wednesdays, and somehow we just never, mix things up. So we should probably mix things up more. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like it. Absolutely.
So to everybody watching, everybody that commented, I have not figured out how to get the comment stream over in the right-hand side here. So when I am not at the dashboard and I'm just a guest, I get the comment stream over there, and I really love it. So I apologize for not looking or not responding to your comments, but I will read them as soon as the show goes off. And I want to thank you, Don, and thank everybody that's watching. And please, if you would be so kind, share this to others so we can have a bigger family to talk with.
Thanks, everybody. I always enjoy. We call it Wonderful Wednesday on here, David. So,
oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay.
Wonderful Wednesday. That's Sonny's moniker for our time together. So I really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, everyone, for a wonderful Wednesday, and have a good night.
Take care.